Hello and welcome to the Block Explorer. I'm Colin Brightfield.
Hey folks, I'm Cash Upton.
The Block Explorer is here to educate and inspire you about the world of crypto and NFTs.
We'll do deep dives into critical concepts for understanding what's happening and discuss the current events shaping the space.
We're making this podcast for the curious, the free thinkers, and the change makers that propel us forward.
As we embark on our adventures, remember that none of this is financial advice and crypto can be risky.
In this episode, we interviewed Andrus Morgan, Teemo of Basin DAO. Good to have you on the podcast today, Thomas.
Yeah, nice to see you guys, Cash and Colin. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad Regen Network put us in touch and just want to poke around and learn more what you're doing in the space. One thing that we saw was that you're involved with Basin DAO as well as Andrus and Morgan. And I really loved, the front line of Andrus and Morgan website where it says we are mobilizing indifferent and agnostic capital to help solve the climate and nature crisis. So can you start there and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Appreciate that. Andrus and Morgan is my real estate company. I've been in commercial and investment real estate for about 20 years. And Basin DAO is basically, for the time being incubated inside of Andrus and Morgan while we sort out all the different legal structures and mechanisms of how we're going to do this. As you guys know from your other interviews and what you're seeing in the space, DAOs are a new type of organization and technically don't really match the real world legal system that well. So there's a lot of things to think through. And with my background in commercial and investment real estate, legal contracts are of utmost importance, and it has to be in writing to make this stuff work. So we're trying to get it right, not perfect, but right. First step at bat here, and then we can adjust later. But Andrus Morgan, I spent almost 20 years doing what are called triple net properties, 1031 exchanges, operating under a section of the tax code, helping high net worth investors move their money into passive real estate investments all over the country. Done about $1.5 billion of deal volume in I think 40 states, or a little over 40 states at this point. And a couple of years ago, I'm here in Colorado. We had the forest fires, the wildfires, and our house was on pre-evac for 2 summers. We had bags by the door, and 10, 15 years here, I've seen the snow just go downhill, right? No pun intended. And all of our water during the summer is a direct result of how much snow we have, how much snow sticks around from the winter. And so a couple of years ago, I said, I have to figure out how to use my professional experience with my private interests and my, the urgency I'm feeling regarding climate change and marry the two. And Basin DAO basically came out of those two things.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you decided to choose a DAO format for Basin DAO and what got you into maybe just the blockchain space in general and crypto and that whole culture?
So, that goes back, Colin, to what was the year? 2012, I bought my first ETH. I wish I would have bought more. Maybe it was 2013. I'm not sure. And I kept seeing the ads like for Bitcoin. I'm like, what is this stuff? And then kind of around 2015, I saw the initial DAO fork, right, of Ethereum, and saw it implode. I didn't participate in it. And then, thankfully, but I was just really intrigued with the concept of a decentralized autonomous organization. And in my real estate business, we've used syndication and general partnerships, limited partnerships, multi-member LLCs. And so it's very similar, right, to the way business gets done in the real estate world. And I think 2017, 2018, I followed the ICO boom, and thank goodness I didn't invest, but I spent like hours and hours and hours on podcasts, right? Like listening and trying to understand like the different projects emerging. And several of those projects are still around, like Althea comes to mind. I've seen a lot come and go. Like Harbor was a really interesting one that I wish would have kept going. Like, basically, security tokens is what they called them at the time, STOs. But so I followed all that. And then, throughout the 10 years around that, I was really into impact investing also. Like I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I marry like triple bottom line investing, impact investing with private capital, like in my day job. And I wasn't getting much traction just because of the nature of my clients. And I think just the nature of the culture too, right? People wanted financial returns. Impact returns would be a nice like bonus, right? Oh yeah, if I can get an impact return, great. But really what I want at the end of the day is financial return. So I kind of hemmed and hawed and kind of meandered through that. And COVID, right? And climate crisis, and crypto working out its kinks, 2020, 2021, here we are. It's like this perfect convergence of all these things I've been working on and interested in. And the climate, no pun intended, is perfect for it, socially, financially, and just, culturally. So
for our listeners that don't know what impact investing is, can you just give us a brief definition of that?
Yeah, it's basically like has a social impact wins, right? Or like some other benefit besides financial benefit. Triple bottom line is another term that people use, like financial returns, social returns, and environmental returns. And it's kind of married, or it's like a subset of ESG investing, like environmental, social and governance investing. And there's been a lot of thought leaders, really, really good people like Sir Ronald Cohen, Jed Emerson. I mean, just really smart people who've been working on it for a long time. And I think now they're going to get their due because ESG is right there with Web3 and refi and crypto. Like it's a hot thing.
What developments have you seen in the crypto space over the last year or two that has really, enabled you to, be able to incorporate blockchain technology into this impact investing that you're doing?
It goes back, Cash, to like DAOs, right? Like, I've been waiting for DAOs for a long time. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a thing. And I'm like, how do we structure it legally? So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and and I just kind of saw it this summer. Like, MakerDAO, obviously, they've been around for a few years. Compound Finance is a DAO. I saw like some of these like climate DAOs popping up, or people were starting to reserve the name, right? Like I've done some stuff on Handshake name servers, Handshake blockchain, Namebase. It's like blockchain for an alternative DNS. And I was just kind of playing around with domain names, and I was like, I'm going to reserve some DAO names just for the heck of it. And I started doing some searches, and lo and behold, like a bunch of Twitter handles were already taken. I'm like, gee, that was like June 2021. I'm like, people are like, they're not just squatting, they're actually doing and starting to tweet. And I started looking at hashtags on Twitter and conversations on Twitter. And I was like, it's just time to do this. We ran a project during the summer, a climate sprint. A friend of mine, John Sanchez, does climatesprints.com, and he's run 30 different sprints on all sorts of different topics, ranging from carbon removal to nature-based solutions to actually crypto, blockchain. And we ran one on ecosystem services in what are called co-benefits in the carbon removal space. And we had a really good time. We had a really smart group of people come together. None of us knew each other. I mean, a few of us did before, but we had about 20 people come together, 13 core people kind of finished the 3-week sprint. And we did a presentation. And at the end of that, it was like, hey, what do I do next? Because it went really well. And it's like a day later, I'm like, I'm forming this DAO that it's been like in my Evernote and like, stacks and stacks of piles and all this research I've done and of impact investing, crypto, climate, carbon. And unfortunately, I had a really good real estate year in 2020. And fall of 2020, I just said, I'm going to go almost all in on this. And I spent 14 months or so kind of preparing myself. And then, just last week, I made the full jump to this 100% where I'm, I have another business called 1031 Navigator that I'm selling right now, and just going 100% in BasinDAO and And Andrus Morgan is just the real estate arm that's going to help form it.
So can you tell us now, what is BasinDAO? What are you guys doing? Let's talk about the exciting stuff.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's relevant for context, right? In terms of the real estate background. Like to me, guys, like everything I see, I kind of see through the lens of real estate because I've been doing it for a long time. And when I started getting into the carbon markets and biodiversity and ecosystem services, I'm like, this is all real estate also. Like it's not technically like law real estate, like nature is nature, right? And waters and oceans and rivers and land are those things. But like the way we govern it in society is through real estate law. So to me, everything I was like, well, carbon's derived from real estate. Biodiversity is derived from real estate. All these things. So it's like, to me, we use the private, a way to scale these climate solutions faster is by using private real estate laws to do it. I think the magnitude of the problem is too big and it's too close to where we need faster solutions. We need them now, and so DAOs were a natural progression of like, okay, the same systems and organizations that kind of got us into this mess, whether on purpose or inadvertently. Like I don't think people, I don't think our ancestors did it on purpose, right? I don't think they knew better, but I don't think those same organizations and systems are going to get us out of the climate crisis, the carbon crisis. And a lot of people don't know, guys, but the biodiversity crisis and loss of habitat is equally or bigger than carbon or climate. Climate is multidisciplinary. It's very complicated. It's science, it's business, it's supply chain, it's culture, it's habits, it's philanthropy, it's government. So it's a very complicated subject. And so to me, I'm like, what can I do to help? And real estate was the natural lens to do that. So BasinDAO is operating at the real property or the real asset level and using all the tools at our disposal, legal tools, both existing and up and coming with Web3 and refi to do our part to help solve the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis.
Awesome. So can you give us a little bit more specifics on like what exactly projects you're kind of looking forward to or what's kind of on the pipeline?
Yeah. So carbon to me is and people get mad at me when I say this, but like carbon to me is a means to an end or a means to creating a system that's going to keep going, right? Like we have to restore first before we can regenerate. But at the same time, we also have to conserve what we haven't destroyed yet. So BasinDAO, to distill it down, it's basically restoration and conservation at scale. And so like the climate sprint I mentioned, like we had three kind of key things that we're looking for, and we're doing this with everything we're doing in Basin. We're also part of the Refi DAO, which is we can talk about later. But basically, anything we work on, it needs to be rapidly deployable, exponentially scalable, and easily repeatable. And to me, like if we can help share that stuff and like help create systems, give to other projects, open source our code, open source what we're working on. And the other organizations do the same thing, then we're going to get to these solutions faster. I think, at least that's my thesis. And so in DAOs, to me, despite all the kinks, right, and all the learning that we're going through right now, and these new open source projects, composable blockchains, interoperability, money Legos, all the things you guys talk about in your podcast are ways to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's we don't have to come up with something new. Like culturally, a lot of these systems have been in place. I mean, they just kind of got like pushed by the wayside over the last 100 years of capitalism. Like the co-op law, for example. Like in England, I mean, there was co-ops, in the mid 1800s. And societies have always organized. People have always organized around common goods and around either nature, resources, people, and we just need to do it better using the new tools we have.
Excellent. So you talk about scaling exponentially in magnitude. So how specifically does the structure of a DAO let you achieve those goals?
So, in all honesty, we're working through, right, DAO, there's a whole study, right, of subsets of like Twitter, DAO Twitter, or like, these thinkers are emerging and they're studying co-op law and philanthropy and group behavior and biomimicry and swarm behavior, and they're applying that to DAOs. But basically, personally, that's the way I see a DAO working. Like if I go out into nature and I look at birds flying, and I say, okay, like that's a collective unit that they're protecting the individual, or they're protecting the collective. Same with a school of fish, or same with I'm here in Colorado and we have these giant elk herds, and it's almost like there's like certain ones on guard, like watching, like they have different like sentinel posts. And so it's like, how do those big like herds or schools or flocks or even ant colonies, or some people don't like the word swarm, but how do you like attack a problem, right? Like how do you protect? How do you eat? Like how do you survive? And when do you decide to like take care of the group versus the individual? And so like DAOs to me are this like interesting like philosophical like point in time surrounding all these different things, and then now using the tools, right, of like, and I don't want to use too much jargon, but like slaying Moloch, right, of like the god of the coordination failure. Like how do we coordinate better, right? And so I'll stop there, but that's like why we're using a DAO, and that's what we're trying to work through.
Totally. Well, and that's the whole beauty of the blockchain, is that it's open, public ledger. It has this visibility and transparency that allows for, snapshots in time to be seen of how is the community welfare managed versus individuals managed, and everyone can be participatory in that. But no, we love that you mentioned Moloch. Every problem we face at the end of the day is just miscommunication, miscoordination,
and that's the financial markets or the climate crisis. It's just a coordination failure by society. So it's like, how can we coordinate a solution better to those, or, and take it further, going back to like impact investing, like homelessness or urban heat islands, which is actually it's a climate problem, but it's also like a inequality problem of like, the lower income parts of the cities have less trees, less green space. So they're hotter. There's more deaths in those parts of the city. Or food deserts. Like, why is there fresh food and good food in certain parts of a city, but not in another part of a city? Or like floodplain management. Like, why did so many houses get built in floodplains, and why, they shouldn't have been there in the first place? And so like these other deeper, like systemic impact problems, I think DAOs are basically popping up around everything, like removing plastic from the ocean, obviously removing carbon, Lex DAO, legal DAO, like lawyer DAOs popping up, basically, art DAOs. There's, any kind of DAO you want, golf course DAOs, Links DAO. We keep making the joke that there's going to be dog park DAOs. Like, it's like, I want a dog park in my town. So like, let's organize, and Web3 is going to create those tools for groups to like organize around something they want to see happen in their community, and it provides a way to fund it and kind of hive mind it, right? Like, how do you attack a problem and solve it faster?
I love that you mentioned the social justice side of it, because so much of the regeneration and fixing of the environmental problems go hand in hand with disproportionate access to resources and how we treat the marginalized. So it's something that's really cool to talk about, because we don't just want to make beautiful nature, but we want to make sure that everyone has access to a healthy and sustainable living environment.
Yeah, environmental justice, right? Depending on the term, right? Climate justice, environmental justice, environmental equity, climate equity. These things all go hand in hand, right? Like carbon, people, nature, money. So Basin DAO is like, one thing we're looking a lot at is like holistic solutions. Like, how do you come in from our lens to a piece of property and apply a holistic solution, or ways to move a project forward that otherwise wouldn't have been able to move forward in the absence of like a DAO or Web3 or refi, like finance methods, and using every tool in the toolbox. Like, even like we're forming a foundation right now. It's a 501c3 that's going to work hand in hand with our for-profit organization. It's separate, right? Separate board of directors, but how can we use that like part of the tax code to also achieve our mission, which is climate, carbon, nature at scale is the other thing we kind of come back to.
Do you have other examples or tools or opportunities that you see for social environmental justice because of blockchain technology in particular that just wasn't possible a decade ago or 5 years ago?
One thing, guys, that I come back to is like I don't even know if they're still around, but it was a group called See Click Fix, like see like with your eyes, like SEE Click Fix, and it was like a reporting tool, with the advent of mobile phones, right, and like geospatial and coordinate location, like in your city, you go around and there's a pothole, there's an abandoned building. It's like this geotagging, and that happened. And now there's better solutions to that, but cities are starting, more and more are using that geolocation kind of crowdsourced, which is crowdsourcing is just the early days of DAOs, basically, of like crowdfunding, crowdsourcing ideas, design charrettes, crowdsourcing solutions.
Kickstarter and stuff.
Yeah, Kickstarter was a big like influence on me as well. Like, okay, I bought countless stuff from urban gardens and nature photographers and different books and videos that people have published. Like, people can just like do what they're interested in, right? And so like Basin DAO, one thing we're trying to help people do is like move from this climate like depression or COVID depression, or as we say in the crypto markets, like FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, right? Of like people have that around climate. So how do we help them move to action or give them an outlet for action? In DAOs, like if we get this right and we have some systems in place, we can onboard people quickly and just let them run with whatever idea they want to do, and they put it up for governance. A proposal, gets debated, either gets approved or not approved, gets funded, resource gets directed to it. And I go back to like what Aaron Wright, one of the leading thinkers, right, on DAOs and law and like how these groups move. He says it's like friends on the internet with a bank account doing like cool stuff or important stuff. So it's like, and he also says like it moves with consensus, right? Like the theory with DAOs is general consensus of like, and we've noticed that like, it's like who's paying attention at the time. Like a week ago in Basin DAO, I mean, our core team, we have 15 core team members. We have 550 people basically like wanting to like help and do work. And like last week was a really active week on our Discord, like a lot of ideas. But then this week, for whatever reason, it's pretty quiet. So there's just a few of us kind of making decisions. But I could get off this call and go into Discord and there'll be 20 messages or 30 messages. It's just like, it's kind of like who like has stuff going on, like who has the energy, the time, the focus. And it's like we're going to keep making decisions, and because I'm like right now I'm the continuum, but I'd like to create a system where I don't have to be there every day, every week or whatever. I could go away for a month or a year, and we've set up systems so that the DAO and the mission of Basin keeps going forward. And by giving people outlets, like helping them like get out of this like helplessness or like feeling of despair around like wildfires and flooding and our government and all the things we're seeing in the news every day, and give them an outlet to like share their gifts, right, or their skills. Like if you're a programmer, or if you have an interest in philanthropy, or if you're an artist and you've always wanted to do an NFT project, or if you're a scientist but you want to get in more to finance, like sure, like do a proposal and hopefully we can plug you into something related to the mission. And that's the theory I think that's going to play out in DAOs. And like if it's all open source, it's all eventually like we're building in a semi-closed environment right now just to kind of keep it under control. But I see like basically it's all open. Here it is. Like pull our shirt up or whatever, and like we'll lift our hood up and here's the inside of the car. Like here's the engine. Like help us build, like help us fix the car. So
that's fantastic. Basin DAO was just selected as the recipient of Regen Network's Community Funding Awards. So congratulations on that. Do you have project that you're going to be using those funds for specifically, or can you tell us more about what that was like to get that funding award?
Yeah, I mean, that was it was just announced, and last week or whatever. And I appreciate you recognizing that, and thanks to Regen Network and all the crew there. Great people, super well intentioned, and super skillful too. I mean, they're executing, they're building, they have, they've been in this for several years. For your listeners, right? Like they're their own sovereign blockchain, and they're in the Cosmos ecosystem. But yeah, we were very fortunate to be selected, and I mean, it's quite an honor, right? Like of that caliber of all the different applicants they had, and I think they've narrowed it down to 42, and like to be a part of all those different creative projects and be a part of that community, and like be able to talk to the founders of all those projects and see what they're working on, and hopefully collaborate with them is a real honor. I mean, the grant was, like it was a few months in the making, right? So a lot of the stuff we've already either done or we're almost done with, but there's always something to do more. And we're kind of like getting some of this stuff over the finish line. Like I think as of this week, we'll have our 501c3 papers in for Basin Foundation. We're finalizing our for-profit structure in terms of like what the entity is going to look like. Like we've kind of gone back and forth between a Wyoming DAO LLC, unincorporated nonprofit association, a limited cooperative association in Colorado, a South Dakota purpose trust, a normal C corp. Like, so there's all these like technicalities if we're going to own real estate and we're going to have a bunch of members, right? And like there's a lot of personal liability, corporate liability. We're working across different states. Eventually we're going to be working cross border internationally. So like, the grant helps us get some of that initial stuff over the finish line. So we're really fortunate for that. And then what's also transpired is since the grant was even like, that was at the end of 2021, which feels like years ago at this point. But like Regen has launched, or they're working on the eco credits module. Like for your listeners, that's like a super cool project. So like an empowering project. If like people see something in their community, like a vacant piece of property, like an ecosystem that needs to be restored, a farm that needs to be revitalized, like Regen Network, this eco credit module and these new methodologies around carbon and nature and social impact, like people can just plug into that. Like you don't have to be like an organization or a corporation. You just basically can have an idea and use this open code base, and then you have to work within the blockchain to do that. But it's a way to start monetizing this stuff, helping your community out, making impact at the same time. And they're also building in the groups module, which it's like a DAO functionality, but without a token. Like there's some really like different structures, right? Of like, do we need tokens? Like certain groups will need tokens, certain groups won't, but they all like need to make decisions, and they need to reach consensus, and they need a way to execute on those decisions. So like Regen Network's blockchain is, these are all kind of new developments that are coming out of the gate. And so we're excited to be helping, guinea pig that is what I keep telling the guys there, is, the gals, is like, raise our hand, like Basin DAO will be the guinea pig on that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm glad you're bringing up, Regen blockchain specifically, and just, other blockchains. I saw you post on Twitter earlier today or yesterday how you met with a multi-billion-dollar global climate fund yesterday, which is awesome. Congrats. While curious but hesitation, they brought up Doge and non-backed junk crypto and blockchain energy usage. And I think I replied, something, not all blockchains are created equal. Yep. So like, what would you tell our listeners, and like, how do you encourage people to get more education and to like have these important conversations about how, not everything is a huge energy hog?
I think the narrative, Cash, is like the media, right? Or the threatened organizations, the threatened governments, the threatened institutions, the threatened individuals, families who are going to be unseated by this stuff. I'm 100% convinced that this is the way forward, despite like missteps, right? Or fraud projects, or controversy, or like just growing pains, right? Of trying to figure this stuff out. And it's been 10 years of that, or even longer, of like And we're going to have more of that. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes. But like the narrative of like these old guard institutions who aren't adapting quick enough, or maybe they just don't want to see it, or maybe they see it, but they just are going to fight it, digging their heels in, right? Like that's like narrative, like don't just buy into that, right? Like, oh, energy usage, like all the blockchains suck all the energy and it's horrible for the environment. Because if you go do some research on proof of work versus proof of stake, and even like some blockchains like becoming net negative, like IXO, right, on Cosmos is like they're building in like a net negative algorithm to their protocol, right? Or Tezos, I think that's the one they're calling that the carbon neutral blockchain. And there's, I even saw there's a new project that popped up basically helping other blockchains or other protocols become carbon negative. Like I think I need to dig more into it, but I think they're going to like basically sell carbon offsets, plug into to whatever the blockchain or whatever their computer programming is around becoming carbon neutral, carbon negative. So like one, don't buy into the narrative. But two, I don't know, Cash, if you saw the second part of the tweet is we're either, the second thread of like, we're either crazy, right, for believing all this stuff, or the other like TradFi, like traditional finance groups, like the climate fund we spoke to, just don't see the writing on the wall, or at least they don't see it yet because they're buying it themselves, a big multi-100-person organization, are seeing like crypto as a scam or crypto as a meme or, oh, it's never going to work. But I think that's like, going back to the thesis of your guys' podcast and the show you're doing of like equality or leveling the playing field or a more inclusive financial system, right? Like that's what this is to me of like, how can people get involved where they are? It's not all about financial capital. Like our system right now, the people fighting, people producing this narrative against the energy, against blockchain and the energy usage and crypto as a scam, whatnot, are the same people who are basically the same groups who have just like put finance and financial capitalism on a pedestal is like, that's the only important thing. But like people are important, animals are important, nature is important. So like there's these, like different, depending on which thinkers you read and look at, there's somewhere between 6 and 8 types of capital. But like we've, like my personal thesis and like Basin, we've distilled it down to 3 types of capital, like financial capital, social capital, and natural capital. And you need those 3 things. I mean, nature will go on without us. Like nature doesn't need money, right? Nature doesn't need people, but people and money need nature. Money needs people, people need money. Like it all goes hand in hand. So like, the Basin logo is a triangle for that reason of like trying to look at like these different types of capitals, right? And like going back to the people in Basin DAO, like what can you bring to the table? Like you don't have to be an investor. You don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, or even $200. Like if you come in with a good attitude and some skill set, whether that be education, background, experience, networking, technical skills, education, like whatever it is, like you can contribute those other types of capital, and we're going to figure out how to put that on the ledger, right? Where we're working through that of like what that means, like in terms of like regulatory risk and securities laws and sweat equity and taxation and all that stuff. But like we want to meet people where they are, and if they can bring both, like if they can also provide financial capital but provide social capital, like great. Like or even people who have, like we have, the Basin we're developing like a 100% property owned strategy, but also like a JV property owned strategy where people can bring properties they own or projects they already like know about or control or are working on, and they want to see it get across the finish line. And how can they, we plug in to help them do that? So like that goes back to natural capital. Like, oh, my family owns, 1,000 acres in Mississippi. Like, how can we sequester more carbon? Like, oh, my family owns a farm in Michigan. Like, how can we like regenerate that farm or and we're not necessarily the experts on all those things, but we can help get them plugged in to the ecosystem so they have the right people and the right skill, the right network, the right tools in the toolbox to help them do these things they want to do.
That's excellent. I love that you're creating a framework for everyone to show up, no matter where you are, no matter what your background is. you can, if you have the will and the passion and you have some skills, you can be a part of it. And I think that's really, the essence of this kind of organic DAO structure, is that it lets people participate in different levels and at different times and at different skill sets.
Colin, it goes back to your guys' mission, right? Like blockchain and crypto for the masses. And that, like, the more education tools like that we can all provide as a group, right? And like learning tools and like outlets for action. Like, I mean, your podcast is an example of that. And so like, that this whole refi DAO, which is totally separate of BasinDAO, there's a lot of people working on that like education layer. Like, back to Cash's comment about the tweet, like that's like the problem, the education about Doge and the education about energy usage on blockchain. I mean, that's just an awareness problem. It's an education problem. So like we're, have people squatting that, all you do with Twitter, you just tag a few people. And next thing you know, there's like people in the refi DAO Discord, like running with like, okay, we're creating a website to educate people on these things.
Yeah. You mentioned refi, which is regenerative finance. People are saying, no, this is a movement that's going to rapidly scale and align incentives for anyone that wants to participate. So what can you tell us more about refi and your experience and what makes you excited about it?
To me, it goes back to 2 of your episodes, right? Like episode 2, like what is money? And what is our belief about money? Where does money come from? Is it a store of value? Is it a currency? Is it just a paper dollar? Is it a bar of gold, right? Like, and then the episode with Dave Fortson of talking about refi, right? And refi to me is like regenerative finance is like creating new value exchanges and new incentives or aligning those things, value exchanges and incentives, to the positive outcomes we want to see. And that's like what impact investing is, of like, what's the positive outcome you want to see in the world? And what do you want to invest in? What do you want to, invest your time, your money, your intellect, whatever, in like these positive outcomes. So to me, refi is like re-engineering the systems we use every day, taking what works, discarding what doesn't work, and creating those incentives. And I go back to money Legos and composability on this one, of like Web3, refi. How do we plug in composable blockchains, interoperability, and money Legos to create these incentives? Like going back to the Regen grant, one of the things we were going to create was what we were calling the Basin chain, to put properties, real world assets on chain, and create money Legos around like all the different property, the different rights, the bundle of rights around property, whether those be use rights, mineral rights, water rights, carbon rights, natural capital rights. But what's happened over the last month, there's like new projects like Centrifuge. I mean, they've been going for a while, but they're worth checking out. Or DigChain is another one, and it's an interchain project, and they're putting real estate on chain. So like all of a sudden, we don't necessarily have to do that. The theory is that if we work with their code base and figure out smart contracts around what they're doing, and we're also working with Regen Network or Toucan with carbon, or IXO for social impact. And these are all things we're working on. Like nothing's concrete yet, but like the idea is, or like Astral Protocol, like their geospatial, or Shamba, which is another geospatial oracle, Digital Gaia, some of these new geospatial projects, like Internet of Things. Like how do you plug in, or like endowment, which is with DAO, like, so instead of DOW, like endowment, like how do you fund a project in perpetuity? Or like, Gitcoin's like quadratic funding model. Like the theory is we don't have to build all that stuff ourselves. We can use composable, interoperable pieces, money Legos or social impact Legos, whatever you want to call them, to create these outcomes. And they can use ours. Like, so if we're building at the real property level and we're figuring out a tool to like assess like this holistic valuation of like what's in a property, what's negative about it, what's positive about it, and how do we equalize those things and create the best outcome. And so people can start to use our tools, our legal contracts. We're talking about basically putting that on a Git book or a GitHub, a repository, like a lot of the legal DAOs. I was looking at different, safe agreements this morning. Like you can go to frickin' GitHub and like find repositories for legal contracts, LLCs. I mean, consult your lawyer, right? But like people are open sourcing their legal contracts now. So the idea is like you can start pulling from geospatial, Internet of Things, and we see a role in this, like for insurance products for around real estate, like property, general liability, casualty insurance, title insurance. Like Ubiquity is a cool project, working with the major title insurance companies to actually allow you to buy a property in Ethereum or Bitcoin or some other type of crypto. So like plugging in with all these different groups or Web3 projects, and like think about like what could be created faster, better, quicker, because you don't have to like reinvent this stuff, or you don't have to do it yourself, like building in a silo anymore.
Yes, all about not reinventing the wheel. We're involved in our local Central Coast Green Building Council, part of the USGBC here in the Central Coast region of California. Our whole mission this year is just to not reinvent the wheel, find those strategic partnerships of people already doing the stuff that needs to be done, and then amplify what they're doing. And I love that you mentioned carbon farming. I bought a textbook on carbon farming years ago, and I do consider myself a carbon farmer. So I love that that's, top of your mission. And we specifically love LimaDAO, KLIMA DAO. I'm sure you've heard much about them, and just how they're talking about using incentives to align the positive impact that can come out of regenerative finance. So, what's your thoughts on LimaDAO? Because I'm sure that's going to have a relationship with BasinDAO.
Yes, I mean LimaDAO. Their idea of starting with demand side and bringing demand on chain and getting rid of these like lower grade or like older vintage or carbon credits that are still on the shelf that haven't sold because they're either like they had some scandal or they had some dust on them. Like let's just say like they got those off the shelf, and they've like as of this morning, I think Raphael was talking about like with Dave on Ixo's Twitter space, they were talking about like they bridged Toucan, like for Klima and some other projects has bridged like 19 million tons of carbon on chain that basically hadn't been sold before. The way I understand it, like wasn't selling, hadn't been sold. So to me, the idea of like stimulating demand and their thesis, right, is like drive demand up, like help the supply side by doing that, like increase the prices, put some pressure on the corporations to reduce emissions rather than offset emissions. So like force them to like try and find some real solutions with like climate resilience, climate mitigation, things like that, versus just offsetting. But at the same time, like the thesis of like raise the price of carbon so then more money gets to the project developer on the ground. Like I buy into that thesis. Like I just haven't seen it play out that way yet. With like to me, like like some you have to. I get worried about the middleman, right? Of like people just like playing the market, and where did all the extra money go in the the big peak and the big downturn. So I'm super excited for what Klima is doing. I wish they were not anonymous or not pseudonymous. Like, tell us who you are. Like, I know some of them are coming out and like, but it's like, I want to do people like you guys, right? Like, I know your real names. I see you. Like, I know where to find you. Like, you know where to find me. Like, it's like we can build a relationship that's like long term. It's not just like, can I trust this, avatar, PFP on Twitter, and like, are they going to disappear? Or they're I don't know. Well, like that's one of my things with Klima. But Klima is like talking about like natural capital and like eco credits and stuff like that, of like bringing, going back to the refi of like currency, of like bringing positive outcomes on chain. Like Klima might end up playing like a instrumental role in that, right? If they can weather this storm and the stuff they're working through, I mean, they're like more power to them, and like the more the merrier, right? Of like the more our money can be backed by ecological health, right? Like Dave and Gregory say, or positive outcomes, or things that like our kids and their kids are going to benefit from, the better.
Awesome. So you've been, it seems like you've been really busy these past couple of years setting all this up. I'm just curious. So as you were working all this stuff, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you're going to face, or that you kind of have come up against?
Yeah, I mean, great question, right? Because we have to be honest about what we're doing, right, and be reflective. I mean, people organization is hard, right? Like people's personalities, people's schedules, people's moods, time zones. Tech is great, right? But you get on a Zoom call and your audio doesn't work, or like the link doesn't work, or the internet's shoddy, or the recording didn't work, or so there's like coordination problems with that, with just people in general. So I think working through that is one. I mean, I think weeding out like scam projects and versus like real projects, or even well-intentioned projects, but that just don't have the fundamentals of like why they're doing it. Like they're well-intentioned, they want to do impact, but like to me, you guys, a lot of your episodes are about NFTs, right? And you did one episode on like the impact of NFTs, of like on the ground impact of like what NFTs actually do for society. Like it's not just art, but what does it actually do? And so like to me, like how do you connect that to the real world? Like metaverse is great, right? But like we live in the real world. Like you can spend all day on your metaverse and your VR or whatever, your Zoom, but like you're gonna go to the store and you're gonna you have to, you have your house and your car and your like interests and your hobbies that happen in real life. So like, how can we use the metaverse tools to create impact on the ground? And it goes back to this thing like MRV, right? And this goes back to money Legos of like MRV is measurement, reporting, and verification. And that comes from the carbon markets. But that's going to be starting to apply to like natural capital, social impact. I mean, art projects, right? If you say you're going to do an art project like in your community, like how can you start to measure, report, and verify the impact like it had on people? Like, is there a tool to do that, right? Like we have smartphones, we have audio, we have video, we have like geospatial, we have acoustic monitoring. I mean, there's like all of a sudden you can start to like, okay, we're going to do a activism, a protest, or we're going to deliver something to City Hall, and you can like start to MRV this stuff just with your smartphone. And like, so it's like looking at the baseline, right? The data of like where we are today and where we could be, and then trying to figure out, okay, like what are those incremental, real measurable steps, like measurable things, like what are those quantifiable things that help us get us to those goals? So I think MRV is a big one, right? A big challenge of like, how do you make sure the data is legit? The people reporting the data are legit. People can't collude, people can't scam, people can't cheat. And I think this like building in the open and then having methods to like, and that's what's so cool about the blockchain of like methods to validate and verify and like check in on that.
Yeah, the blockchain is that tool, and that's what's really cool. That you can't do double entry book, or you can't double report something or whatnot. The measure, report, verify though, I love that you bring that up, and you talked about the Internet of Things earlier too, and there are some blockchains that are trying to be like the Internet of Thing blockchain. Like have you heard of Helium Network?
Yeah, I mean, I've been checking them out. I haven't used them at all, but someone I was on a call with showed me his little helium device on his desk, which I was like, whoa. He's like, I have 5 of them now. I'm like, cool. Like,
anything else you're working on and excited about, or is it pretty much all in on Basin DAO right now?
Yeah, man. I'm excited about all of it. Like I'm fired up. I'm having more fun like professionally than I've ever had. Right. And like, so just trying to connect those dots of like manage my other, I'm a dad and husband and, have personal hobbies and interests. And so trying to manage that with just like the obsession with refi and carbon and nature and DAOs and all this exciting stuff. But to me, like that's like that, I'm working on like what's the definition of legacy, right? Or meaning in making a difference, and how do we use money to do that in like our skills, right? And our like creative powers and our intellect to combine all those things and create a legacy that's going to outlive us. And so that's something I'm like just juggling personally, right? Is how you do that, and how you keep the energy up and not burn out, like with the fire hose, right? Same thing, there's so many like tweets and messages and awesome shows to listen to and watch, and like, so how do you just like still stay focused and get stuff done, but also like drink from that fire hose?
Yeah, I love that. That's a good thing for us to all be thinking about. You say you're in Colorado. Are you going to be at the Ethereum conference in Denver this month?
I need to book it. I need to go down for a few days. I mean, most of it I think I can watch probably online, but there's a lot of people I'd love to meet in person. Are you guys going?
We'll be there.
Yeah, we're going to be there.
Love to meet you and hang out.
Cool. Yeah. I did a in-person meeting today with a land trust, and it was hilarious. So like, I haven't done one of those in a while. So it's like, I'm excited, just to do that with people again. So.
Yeah, I mean the crypto space is amazing, and there's so many awesome people, but you usually get to know them only digitally. So we definitely are looking forward to seeing people face to face in real life. So it's been really good to learn more about your projects. I think we've had an awesome conversation. I just want to zoom out just for a little bit. We're almost done. We're just going to ask a couple more questions. Big picture, in the crypto and blockchain space, what do you kind of see as these bigger trends that are happening in this year and maybe looking ahead 1 to 2 years down the road?
I think like it's just going to be continued disruption, Colin. Like industries that we think are like there, right? That we think are the winner take all or not going to change. But we've seen it all before, from automotive to technology to internet to telecommunications, to facsimile. I mean, like all these things that are just like, my daughters are like, they were doing something the other day and they like touched a screen on the TV. I was like, guys, that's just a TV. Like it's not, like there's no touch screen, right? So like all these things like that are just like going to be disrupted. Like I think DeFi, like moving, from TradFi to DeFi to refi, and like for your listeners, right? Of like, there's just so much opportunity if you keep a positive and open mindset of like, I don't like my car insurance company. I don't like my property insurance company. I don't like my bank. I don't like where I'm getting my food from. I don't like how the grocery store is doing. Like, it's like, I don't like that, Jitsi, right? Popped up as a video conferencing service because like it's an open source alternative to Zoom and Google Meet. So there's like, I don't like, people, I'm just speaking out loud here, but like people don't like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. There's like all these alternatives popping up, and you could create one of those disruptive, like game-changing companies, and you don't have to do it the old way, where you go on a year-long roadshow, kissing venture capitalists' butts and trying to raise money. It's like friends on the internet with a bank account to like do important stuff. Like just like people are just spinning up discords around like it's something they're interested in. And like, I mean, like Constitution DAO, right? Like you guys have, talked about that and seen that. Like that went from 0 to 42 million or whatever, 47 million in like 3 weeks. Like same with the golf.
It was a week. It was less than a week. It was like 4 days.
Yeah, ridiculous. So it's like and that's the Constitution, granted, right? Like it's a huge cultural icon and meme and like, real good meaning behind it. But like you can do that for your community, like rally some people. I think, there's going to be disruption in the financial markets as well. Like it's going to probably be a bumpy ride, but like, as you guys have said, like you got to build in a bull market, right? Like that's like the real stuff, the real people who are committed are going to keep building, put their heads down, like, and just like, go to ETH Denver and go to Lisbon and go, like, they're going to keep doing this stuff, even if it's hard, even if it's challenging, because I think what's on the other side is something we've all been longing for. So
I love that. I think you put it really well. So I hope all the things you're talking about come true.
Yeah, there was a great Bankless episode where they're talking about the developments in Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. And with each layer of, financial improvements and technology, it removed a layer of lawyers needed. And that's like what you were saying earlier. It allows greater access to the common person to spin up these solutions to things that need to be solved.
An Ethereum address, basically. And I'm amazed, guys, like about like just airdrops and the Ethereum name service and just the other just like addresses in general and how people move value, right? Whether it be a JPEG, NFT or JPEG or PFP or a POAP or actually financial value, right? Or some kind of store of value, like you can just send it to each other. You don't need to go to the bank. You don't need to ask permission. This whole thing about like permissionless, right, and trustless, like I keep coming back to it, like like these tools are there and they're evolving, and how can we help build them and make them better? So.
Right on. We believe in permissionless systems as well. So let's keep building those tools. So we're going to wrap it up, but I just want to do one more time. How can our listeners connect with the work that you're doing and support you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like listening to like your guys's podcast, right? Of like getting educated, suggesting topics for you guys to cover. Like I'm happy to provide referrals. Like, Dave put me in touch with you guys. Like I'm happy to do the same. Of anybody you see me conversing with on Twitter, like I'd love for you guys just to like keep, like speaking the gospel, right? Of refi and DeFi and like these new systems. I think what you guys are doing, like education wise, is a huge component. But I think like for Basin DAO, I'm super active on Twitter or pretty active on Twitter. So like Basin DAO is our kind of main account, and then Teemo Industries, TMO Industries is my personal account. But reach out to me there. You can go to the website, sign up for season 2, right? If you have an idea for a climate project or an impact project, or you just want to you're an engineer and you want to explore working with a DAO, or you're an artist and you want to explore working with a DAO, like sign up for season 2. We close it down for season 1 so we can actually just like focus without onboarding people. But yeah, I think just reach out and we'll try and plug you in. Twitter is a great way to ping me. And
love it. Yeah. And we couldn't be more appreciative of that validation, Teemo. So really, thank you. We really do want to be an educational force, and we believe that's paramount. So thanks a lot. And yeah, we learned so much from you today. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing your time with us. And we look forward to working together more.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll make it down to Denver, and I'll ping you if I do, and we'll meet up.
Please do.
Yeah, please do. We look forward to that.
Cool. Colin, Cash. Yeah, really appreciate it, guys.
We're going to wrap it up here for today. Please take the time to follow Basin DAO and get more involved. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please leave us a review.
I'd like to give a big thank you to our friend Matthew Patrick Donner, who's responsible for the Block Explorer production, including our music, mixing, and editing.
Thank you for exploring the world of blockchain with us. Crypto is changing the world, and we're here to ensure that you're ready.
Please subscribe to our podcast and share with any TradFi folks or sustainability gurus who still may be wary of the regenerative potential of the blockchain. And of course, with your friends and coworkers.
We look forward to sharing our next episode with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.